During decades living in and reporting on Israel, I covered tragedies that plunged the nation into periods of collective grief. The 1995 assassination of Prime Minister Rabin, countless Palestinian suicide bombings in the 1990s, the collision of 2 Israeli Air Force helicopters in 1997 that killed all 73 soldiers on board, the Second Intifada, so many prior rounds of fighting between Hamas and Israel, the Second Lebanon War. And each time the airwaves and the TV news filled with escalating casualty counts and painful images of the dead. But the idea that Israel chazakah, Israel is strong, remained consistent. The country always rallied around its leadership in these moments of crisis. But that's not quite what's happening at this moment. Israelis who pride themselves on never being friars are shattered. And they're demanding answers and shouting their frustrations at Prime Minister Netanyahu in particular, as the 240 hostages remain captured in Gaza, and even before all the bodies of the tortured, murdered civilians have been identified and buried. This brief discussion, about 35 minutes, is what happened, and where do we go from here? How do we exhibit resiliency? And how do we chart a course forward, both here in the diaspora and in Israel? And to try and help us answer some of these questions, in addition to Rav Shai, we have Professor in Justice Elyakim Rubinstein, who held countless positions of negotiations in Camp David Accords, the Madrid Peace Summit, Israel's peace talks with Jordan, and of course, is perhaps most well known as Israel's former Attorney General and Supreme Court Justice. He's now a professor at Hebrew U. Professor Yuli Tamir, a former Minister of Immigration and Education, a former MK from the Labor Party, one of the founders of Shalom Akshav, Peace Now. She is the professor of philosophy who wrote a passionate defense of nationalism in 2019 and how the left needs to reclaim it and sustain it for the purpose of democracy. And she is now president of Beit-Berl Teachers Training College. And of course, we have Rav Shai. Since October 7th, I've been asked to do a lot of speaking and moderating, and the first question I really want to start with is a simple one. How are you?
Well, not too well. By the way, I don't see the audience. The lights here are, like the KGB in the investigation. But there's a story about, it's not a time for much humor, but President Kennedy visited the Alcatraz prison around here and was supposed to talk to the inmates. He didn't know how to open up his remarks. He said, "I'm glad you're all here." So I am here because I'm glad you're all here. This has not been, everybody understands why this has been a bad period since October 7. And the fact that I'm here, I think Professor Tamir also, is the bond with you. The bond with you as Jewry. Not always do Israelis understand and know how important is the bond with diaspora Jews, in particular with America. We can have differences of view. We can agree on many things. We can disagree on some. When I was listening to the eloquent speech by Rabbi Held, I agreed with many of the things. I disagreed with some. And I want to dedicate my short remarks, to the kidnapped. There are 2 families here that I just heard that they came. Mr. Gonen, who's the father of Ronnie, Mr. Dalal, who's the brother of Guy, and also I'll mention Yarden Roman, whom Adi Davis talked to me about yesterday. These people, while we are talking here, are what the Bible in Psalm 107 would say, Bnei Adam yoshvei choshech b'tzal mavet, aniyei oni ubarzel, people who are within darkness and are in chains and so forth. And also to dedicate it to the soldiers who are fighting at this very moment for our country. I didn't sleep well here, not because of jet lag, because I'm thinking of them, including my own cousin who was just wounded 2 days ago, and thank God after operation he's okay, hopefully. And last, to dedicate it to the victims, including my relative Hannah Kritzman of blessed memory, who at the age of 88 was shot at and slaughtered in her kibbutz Be'eri, where she lived for over 70 years. I also want to mention that, of course, the IDF is mostly Jewish soldiers, but there are also non-Jews who fight. And last week, a lieutenant colonel by the name of Beka, a Druze officer, battalion commander, lost his life. And I wrote, I'm personally friendly with the head of the Druze denomination, Israel, Sheikh Wafak Tarif, and I wrote him a message of condolences, and here is his response. I highly appreciate, this is a very difficult loss of a combatant, a commander. The loss is for the whole state of Israel, for the IDF. What comforts me, he says, that he died in a just war to defend the state. We are all partners in our dear and beloved state of Israel. We hope to know better days after victory on the enemy. That's what Sheikh Tarif wrote just this Friday. And this attack, I don't want to start with the legal analysis, but this attack was not in occupied territories. It was within Israeli territory, sovereign territory. It was against all norms of international law, humanitarian international law, laws of war, genocide, kidnapping, all of that. And you know, lawyers, I'm, as you understand, a lawyer, and lawyers usually say, well, on one hand, and on the other hand, that's why somebody said he was looking for a one-armed lawyer. Here, the one-armed lawyer is indeed needed. Maybe we'll draft Trumpeldor from the old days, because this is not a war that has two sides in terms of justice. It has one side, and I'm saying it not only emotionally as an Israeli, but also as an international lawyer. What we saw here is Nazi-like activities, and it has nothing to do with the need in which I took part personally for many years to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This has nothing to do with that. This is an abuse of every international law, and the pictures speak for themselves. And it is anti-Semitism. One of them was recorded calling one of the barbarians, was calling his mother, I killed 10 Jews. Big deal, I'll get I'm a hero. So that's where we are in terms, but we ought to look at the future. And here I disagree with our friend, with Rabbi Held. It's not only hope, it's optimism. And I think I'm the oldest person on this dais, on this in the group that is talking here. I can remember how Israel was when I was growing up, how poor it was, how rations for food were there, how in all our street in the suburb of Tel Aviv, there were two cars, an army car and a taxi. Nowadays, when I come to my brother who lives there, I can, if he doesn't open his parking, I can roam around for half an hour. And the development in science, in academia, in economy, in high tech, in Torah, in just name it, is something. And I'm a son of a Holocaust survivor. My father lost his family in Belarus in 1942, all shot into a mass grave. I remember accompanying Prime Minister Rabin. I was his cabinet secretary back in August of 1992 to President Bush, the father, talking on loan guarantees for the immigration from the Soviet Union. Coming back was August 14. On the plane, it dawned to me that today is 50 years since, exactly 50 years, since the day my family was shot into that mass grave, and I'm now representing a Jewish sovereign state. We are at this moment in a dark moment in our history, but there is not only hope, there's optimism if I compare what happened before. So what
Let's let you.
I'd like to conclude with not only optimism, but what next? What next? We need, and we will be victorious in this war. And we have to work daily on the return of the kidnapped. So that's stage one. Stage two is rebuilding of the kibbutzim, of the moshavim, of the villages around Gaza that were demolished, like my relatives, kibbutz and others. And this is something which must be done because the enemy's biggest pride will be if that remains destroyed, and it will not. And the third thing is, of course, Gaza itself. And we evacuated Gaza. Very few people remember that in 2005, with the idea that it will become a free place. We left them the settlements that were there with their agriculture, just name it. Instead, it was turned into an arsenal of armor, and hospitals are used to headquarter Hamas people. Short story to finish. I was Attorney General, it was mentioned, and I remember 2003, a group of generals come to visit me on a scheduled meeting on something. And then they tell me, you keep reminding us in every government meeting, which I used to do. I was in a government meeting also with Professor Tamir. In cabinet meeting on security matters, I always reminded them of the need to be cautious with civilian population. And they told me, these generals, that day, okay, you mentioned that each time. Yesterday, we could do away with all the Hamas leadership because they all convened in an apartment, in a building, all of them in Gaza, but we didn't do it because that building, they were on the 4th floor, the building had 8 floors, and all the rest were civilians, and we didn't do it. So Israel does not need being taught morality. Our army works with very strict instructions. There may be mistakes, we're not angels, but the policy and the orders are very clear. So I'm concluding by saying thank you for your support. Thank you for your support in various ways. Thank you for being with us, and because while being with us, we are also with you. Thank you very much.
Professor Tamir, how are you? And I know you're thinking about this issue of resiliency and working on that.
Well, first of all, I think we're all sad. We're really deeply sad and troubled, thinking about the hostages, thinking about the children there. I spend my evening at my daughter's, who has two very young babies, running to the shelter every night and thinking, oh my God, I'm doing it again. I did it with my children, I'm doing it with my grandchildren. And it's sad, and it's really almost impossible to sleep when you think about those people who don't know where their children are sleeping and who puts them to bed and who covers them and who feeds them. So first of all, my heart is with the kidnapped and their families. But I believe that when you are in a situation like this, knowing that you are coping with very, very difficult feelings, the first thing to do is to do something to improve the situation. Over my desk, there's this saying, don't only sympathize, organize. And I think this is what we're doing now. Israel today is not governed by a government. It is governed by the civil society. And I'm very proud to be part of it. I'm very proud that my college, which is a teacher training college, is now running kindergartens all over the region, from Eilat, by the way, to the north. Every day I get files of requests for teachers. I have people asking me to come to their schools and help them rebuild the school system. I have people trying to support children facing trauma, parents facing trauma. The system is now building itself anew in a rather different way. It's not that the ministry builds it. The ministry just gives me, unfortunately, while I'm here, orders how to persecute my Arab students who've done nothing just in order to show that we are strong on the Arabs. This is not resilience for me. This is brutality. I defend my Arab students and I defend my Jewish students. Everybody should be safe in my college. So when I get letters from my colleagues around the world saying people should be protected, I say my students are more protected than Jewish students in Oxford or here. My Arab students are more protected than Jewish students here. I want to protect all of them, and I want to do it with them and to allow them to contribute to the society, because working together to improve life as it is right now. I'm not speaking about the future. I'm speaking about going tomorrow to pick some flowers from a farmer who has no support. I'm talking about distributing minimal sort of tools to build the kindergarten, and you won't believe how beautiful the kindergarten we build now are. They are against all the rules. There are no security rules, and there are no forms and files how to build a kindergarten. But those are community who are building education for their children, and they do it in the best and most generous way you can imagine. So for me, when you come to a crisis, the way to cope is to know that you have the power to change the reality. And I think what we need you in this partnership is not only to defend the idea of Israel as a legitimate Jewish state. With all its limitation, it is still one of the best democratic states in the region. And I have a lot to say about this government, as you can imagine. But I still believe that Israel has the potential to become again, a democratic state that is one of the best ones, certainly in our regions. But we need your help to build it anew in the light of solidarity. When we talk about resilience, I don't want the kind of resilience that become too popular right now about we are strong, we will show them that we are strong. I don't want to show anyone I'm strong. I want to be strong. And I want to be strong together with other people who I share my life with. And I share my life with a very diverse community. I have ultra-Orthodox students now running to be recruited to the army, and I applaud them. And I have Arab students who are going to teach in kindergartens because they need teachers, and I applaud them. And I have Jewish students who are in the army, and my heart goes to them. And I want all of them to acknowledge each other as partners in this rebuilding. Because if I leave any of them out, we will pay as a country a very high price. So we started now this project called Compassionate Resilience. And we go around to schools, we go around to municipalities, we go around to people who need to speak with us in order to be strong enough to fight for ourselves, our defense, our state, our future, but not to efface the needs of others. As Shai said before, people want clarity. It wants us or them. I don't think that we can allow ourselves to be in this position. I think no one in the 21st century could be in this position, regardless of our specific situation. I think we should educate to live with ambiguity. I think we should educate people to live with a sense of responsibility to all members of the community. So I think, you won't be surprised, I'm an educator. I believe justice is an important thing. The Supreme Court is a very important thing. But if you don't have a good education system, if you don't educate your children to believe in justice and peace and solidarity and passionate resilience and the ability to grow together, you won't win. And I believe we'll win because we're able to do that. So thank you for inviting me here.
You know, Professor Tamir, when we spoke the other day, I asked you, I think, what conceptions that you held previously before October 7th may have changed since October 7th. And you said something to the effect of, from my point of view, I didn't change my mind, that at the end of the day, only a political solution will ensure our security. And what I thought about on October 7th was being in Gaza in 2005, and watching as the Israeli army removed the settlers and reporting on that, and thinking to myself, the fundamental contract of the two-state solution is to trade territory for peace. And how are Israelis going to move back to the Gaza envelope and all these places, and how are they ever going to give up territory after what has happened? So can you talk a little bit about how you still believe that, as you did before, that that is the only way forward?
I never believed you can solve a national conflict by power only. And I think we, as an international community, we have learned, from Afghanistan to Iran, to all the places where we lost life and gained nothing, that the way forward is political. Not with the Hamas. I agree, the Hamas, and this is something we should say, the Hamas is not representing the Palestinian people. The Hamas is harming the Palestinian people. And if you hear, I think many of the leaders of the Palestinian community, they say it as well. They are not the representative of the Palestinian people. They are not an organization who desires to come to a political solution. But there is representatives, but they are representative of the Palestinians that were silenced in the last few years under Netanyahu, who could have been partners. And Elyakim and I have been veterans of these negotiations. They were never easy, and it was never obvious that we can achieve them. But I don't think, and I think we should say it, we will fight in Gaza, we will do what we need to do, but at the end of the day, defeating the Hamas is only a political act They will have to be moved out, and some other Palestinian representative power will have to replace them. We will not be able to do it without the help of the United States, and I'm grateful to Joe Biden and his really immense support to Israel. I think we need the Arab world with us. I think we need Saudi Arabia. I think we need to go back to the Arab Peace Initiative. There were things who were rejected time after time because Israel didn't want to give up the territories.
But right now, we're not seeing the world rally in a united way about Hamas must leave Gaza. Hamas is the problem. It's not that, right? There's calls for Israel to stop fighting, ceasefire, and all that. How do we rally that coalition beyond Joe Biden?
Nothing will happen right now. Now we have to bring the hostages back. That's now, okay? Now. Then we will have to think about a ceasefire. And then there will be a political process. I think one of the biggest mistakes is to think that those things can be solved immediately.
Okay.
I think from our long experience, we as Jews, have to recruit the world to support a political solution. But we should do it as a second stage. As I think Shai said and other people said, now the hostages, then a ceasefire, then a political solution, and finding a way to separate. Can you imagine what would have happened if we had agreed 10 years ago for an international force staying between us and the Gaza Strip, just protecting the border? The 7th of October would not have been possible. So we are to seek a political solution. Fighting is just the first stage, it's the immediate stage.
Okay, we have a plan. Okay, Justice Rubinstein.
You know, here I'll take Rabbi Held's words. I'll say it's more hope than optimism. And I'm a veteran of peace negotiations. I think I'm the only living Israel who participated in negotiations with all our neighbors, starting with Egypt at Camp David in '78 and continuing with Jordanians, Palestinians, Lebanese, Syrians, all our neighbors. And it has been a difficult road. Thank God we have 2 peace treaties with Egypt and Jordan, and they are surviving the crises that come and go all the time. And I hope they survive this crisis too. These are the 2 longest boundaries. The most difficult one is with the Palestinians, which not very many people remember that with Lebanon, we had an agreement signed in May of 1983, but never took off because of Syrian pressure. And with Syria, by the way, the negotiations were the worst that I ever attended. They wouldn't even shake your hands when you came to the negotiating room. But the Palestinians is the most difficult one, obviously, because of the geography, because of demography, because of history, just name it. I don't want to be over-optimistic that this is going to... Professor Tamir is a veteran peace fighter, so to speak, from the days of Peace Now, many years ago to now. And she's right, and I'll come here not as a lawyer, but as somebody who cares for education. I think we ought to educate ourselves that despite the difficulties, despite the crisis, despite the unbelievable tragedies, you know, I visited, my wife and I made a point to visit bereaved families from the tragedy, even if we don't know them. And we went to a number of families. One of them was a woman in Jerusalem who had just 2 children, twins. Both of them were killed in that party and in Kibbutz Re'im that day. And all what she was saying, and she repeated it time and again, and what could we say? We couldn't say nothing. She said all the time, the Almighty gave me to them in one day and took them in one day. Nevertheless, we ought to educate ourselves that there should be prospect for peace. 10 days before President Sadat came to Israel, if you'd ask me, and I was at the time the assistant to Foreign Minister Moshe Dayan, is that a possibility that Sadat will show up in Israel? I'd say, you're crazy, go see your psychologist. And it happened. So maybe it could happen if proper leadership shows up on all sides and so on. But meanwhile, we have to educate also that the soldier that is fighting now on the outskirts of Gaza would know that there's somebody somewhere thinking on a day in which peace will come. Thank you.
You're wondering why I keep standing up as I can't see the clock here. We have 4 minutes, yeah.
One minute. And Elyakim was part of it. And, you know, it is a commemoration day for Yitzhak Rabin. And the Oslo Agreement was never actually fully developed and implemented. Nevertheless, the amount of security we gained from the parts of the Oslo Agreement that gave authority to the Palestinian Authority to be active in securing Israel, something we undermine and disregard all the time, is enormous. We are out of the main cities in the West Bank. We rely on this defense. We deny this defense. So I'm not speaking about a love story. There won't be a love story in the Middle East. But agreements that are providing more security for us and for them could, I think, be part of a future agreement. And maybe someday, inshallah, they will develop into something bigger. But we are now at the stage that we need to build trust and ability to defend each other, knowing the price is enormous.
Today is Rabin's Memorial Day in the general calendar, not the Jewish calendar. And I was privileged to be under him negotiating the Treaty of Peace with Jordan, be his cabinet secretary. I think it's appropriate to remember him this day. And November is a month of remembrance, the Balfour Declaration, which gave the international, so to say, umbrella to our Zionist efforts, was November 2nd, and 1917. So there is hope and optimism.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is a really, I'm running a risk here because that's a really, I wasn't expecting a positive ending to this panel. But in the last moments, because I want Rav Shai to be able to add here as well, you know, Zach wants us to have action at the end, but I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. So tachlis, okay, you're talking to the diaspora here. What is the one thing that everyone here can do towards all these goals that we've talked about? I'm going to start with Rav Shai.
Tachlis is talk less.
Talk less?
Tachlis is talk less.
Talk less.
I'm Kuberski.
Rav Shai, you gave a list at the end of your remarks, but if you have to distill it right now, right, to achieve some of these goals, that we can, because people want to do something, right?
I would say, first of all, make sure that the world does not forget these hostages and their families.
Yeah.
And second, and I'll content myself with these two, in a world in which people refuse to tell or see the truth about Hamas, tell the truth about who and what it is. Tell the truth.
Okay. All right.
As I said earlier, we organize, we need your support, because the moment a child meets a teacher or a farmer meets a helper, or a new kindergarten is born, a new hope is being born. And we need your help to give this hope to the people on the ground. It's a day-to-day struggle to make people smile. And when I come to a place that, you know, a new teacher comes, somebody bought some toys, and it's really working, and I see the children smile, I say, well, that's the beginning of a much bigger hope. So be active, support the civil society in Israel. We are doing the work, and we need you to do it best.
Okay. Final word.
Famous last words. Sustain the support. There's the media and the public opinion are kind of the next day there's something new, some new headlines. We need the awareness of the kidnapped, of the need to rebuild, of the need to remember who Hamas is. All of that, we need to sustain it because people tend to forget rather quick. And I also want to underline that when we do our military, when we perform in Gaza and we ask people to leave, it's not because we are against the Gazans. We are not against the Gazans. We used to have them work in Israel. We used to do many things in their benefit. We are against Hamas. So remember, Hamas is ISIS. Hamas is Daesh. So just sustain with God's help. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.